I want to welcome everyone to another episode of One Door at a Time, Concentric Educational Solutions podcast, where we look at the intersection of community, education, entrepreneurship. We're live at NABSE right now recording. I have the unbelievable privilege to have Kwame Simmons, CEO of Simmons Advantage, known this brother for a long time, very serious, sharp brother. I look forward to the conversation that we're going to really talk about, looking at the intersection, particularly everything that's been happening in education before COVID, during COVID, and now after COVID. But before we jump into that, like really talk about, you have a unique story coming from the D.
Yeah.
So what up though?
What it do? So I appreciate it, man. I think the first of all, I would say, I think, you know, I want to give you a lot of credit for the grind. And I think during our conversation that needs to be elevated around, you know, black men and being in business and what it takes to not only try and deliver a service, but to also develop the business acumen to be successful. So I think we got to get that out of the way first, so that we weave that in, because that's significant.
So as you come through like Detroit, right?
Yeah.
You come through Detroit, you know what I mean? Like, what were some of the things that you experienced in Detroit and that kind of really formed who you are now?
Unequivocally, I grew up on the west side. It's the best side. So you come to Detroit, they're gonna tell you it's east side or west side. It's west side, right? So let's just establish that now. But I grew up during a time of Young Boys Incorporated. So this is the height of the crack era. Yeah. And so, you know, coming up as a young man, I learned early around respect, right? What respect means. I'm one of 5 boys in my family. So being the 4th boy, I grew up at a time in which we understood the power of respect and the consequences of disrespect, right? The neighborhood and the city really created a level of humanity that you must respect. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was it for me. I would say, but that was secondary. First, no question, it was my dad. My dad said, look, man, you know, I don't care what's going on out there. I'm the anchor, right? Yeah, and if you want the ship to sail, cross me. Right. And so my dad was 6'2", 240 pounds, man. He wasn't to be played with. He was really clear about that. And so I always admired his ability to be a pillar throughout whatever storm or thing was happening. He was a very steady, a steady ship for us, me and my brothers, throughout that time, and still is. And so I would say that's the anchor for me, between those two things, my dad and then also where I grew up.
So you leave Detroit, you go to Hampton.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to the Hamptonians out there.
That's right. It's a ton of us.
How did Hampton impact you?
You know, I tell people that Hampton is the place where I transitioned from a boy to a man. You know, and really, it wasn't until I got into education where I realized the richness of what historically black colleges and universities do. They create a culture of fine-tuning, of taking young black kids and putting the pressure on us as coal, with the only expectation and the only choice that we have is to become diamonds, right? You have to learn punctuality. You have to learn how to research. You have to learn how to network. And so going to Hampton, I know I have a network of people of color all over the U.S. and the majority of the world. Like, we're going out and doing all kind of phenomenal things. And so similar to you, all of us who have attended HBCUs, I go back every year for homecoming. It's a love fest, man. It's like, you know, because there's so much that goes on in terms of, and again, I'm gonna reference doing the business and trying to get funding and trying to scale your business. We don't see the same faces that were at Hampton. So we got to come across and interact with white folk who don't really want to see us do well and just aren't familiar enough with black people to really have the confidence that we can actually deliver that. And so coming to an HBCU, it just pours love into you, man. It gives you that confidence to go out throughout the rest of the year after those homecomings to do great work.
It fills you back up.
Oh, no question.
Why'd you choose Hampton?
Well, my dad would be upset about this, but I chose Hampton. I was going around. One, I thought I was gonna go to Howard. initially, but I was like, DC is too much like Detroit and like on steroids. Right? It was so much to do. It was so much excitement. At 17, I was like, I don't know if I could, how well I would do at that age. I was mature enough to know that. And so getting to Hampton, it was like, look, you got 6 weeks in the dorms.
Yes.
Curfew. Yep. Like, hey, you giving us a shot to really be successful. And so,
but you knew HBCU. You knew you.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna tell you. So the reason I knew, my brother graduated from Morehouse. When we went to his graduation at Morehouse, and shout out to Jamal. When I went there, the Morehouse men graduated on Sunday. Spelman women graduated on Saturday. And so on Saturday, the Morehouse men go and support the Morehouse women. I didn't know that because when we get there, we doing other graduation activities. But on Sunday, when the Morehouse men graduated, no matter what, rain, hail, sleet, or snow, they graduate on top of the hill.
Okay.
The women from Spelman come up dressed in all white to support them, bro. I had never seen anything like that. On top of the energy that they brought, I had never seen that many beautiful black women.
Yeah.
All in one space.
Yeah.
I said, oh no. So when I got to Hampton, they reiterated, bro. They were like, yo, the ratio of girls to boys is 16-1. Everything else was Charlie Brown for me, bro. Wah, 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 wah. I was locked in.
So you're at Hampton. How'd you decide education, man?
So,
because I never asked you that.
Yeah. So I think education decided for me. I knew when I went to Hampton, I wanted to serve people.
Okay.
And so what I initially thought I wanted to do was to be a doctor. So I was gonna go to like medical school because I thought that was it because I really enjoyed science when I was in high school. But I ran into this class called organic chemistry, bro. Organic chemistry will humble you, bro. It will humble the best of them. I was like, yo, I said, man, I can't win in the lecture or the lab. I was like, man, you got to find a way to get out of here. And so, good friend of mine, man. Shout out Lloyd Bryant. I went to. He was gonna take me home one day, and he's a history major. I went inside that class, met him, met a ton of people that I'm really tight with to this day. And a good friend of mine also who was in there introduced me to his girlfriend at the time, who was a teacher.
Okay.
So she said, hey, look, I got an opportunity for like a part-time role if you're interested. And that was my introduction to education. It was an alternative school in Newport News. So when I got there, I started to see, like, wait a minute, I know so many more white people here. How did all of these black kids get to the alternative school? And so it started to kind of generate to me like how the system was reacting to black kids. And that's what kind of started it for me. And so after I graduated, I actually did a stint in Baltimore. I was the national college coordinator for the NAACP.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at the NAACP headquarters. So I left there and worked for a small stint on the Gore Lieberman campaign down in Florida. Did some stuff with the Chads I was in Tallahassee. So these people was in Miami-Dade, Broward, and up in Tallahassee. I was in Tallahassee checking the Chads. And after he lost, I went back and started teaching. Yeah.
When you started teaching, was it DC or where'd you go? Your first
Detroit.
You went to Detroit?
Yeah, I went to
So talk about your journey through education. I know it's you're two decades in. If I'm 2 decades, right? So what was that journey like going through education?
So I think the journey has been eye-opening and I believe to be more complex. And so how I want to respond to that question really has to do with how I see where we are now versus what was happening then. And what I see now is that there are spots of places that have black male educators. And it wasn't until I started to get older and start to elevate in my career that I saw black male educators less in roles of authority. And so when you start to see lack of representation, you now start to see where statistics say where 63% of students who have IEPs are graduates. Well, 63% of students with IEPs graduate next to their counterpart at 85%. But 75% of the male population in prison had an IEP that's black and brown. And so how was the system reacting to create those conditions? And so I started to now realize how this school to prison pipeline begins to emerge. And so my journey without calling it school to prison pipeline has always been how to create conditions, whether I was in the classroom, leading a school, or partnering with schools like we do now, to ensure that every kid has the best opportunity to demonstrate his or her potential.
So you go through that, right? You go through. We meet in Detroit.
Correct.
And I remember they were like, "Oh, this candidate is coming in, Kwame Simmons, to work at EAA, and can you take him around?" And I'm like, oh, "Who the hell is going to come to Detroit and work?" Because I didn't know you were from Detroit.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, Detroit hadn't flipped yet. Like, Detroit is a little bit different now from 2010, 2012. You go, we work in the EAA. What made you say, you know something, I'm not going to go back into a district, and now you created the Simmons Advantage, which is huge.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, man. My wife, I had gotten to a place where I was tired of arguing with people about the conditions of black kids.
Yes.
That it started to get almost John Q-ish.
Yeah.
I felt like, I was getting ready to lock some people into a room and not let them out until they made the right decision. And what I realized, it was I was experiencing some challenges with mental health. I just wasn't healthy to do that work. It's like, which is why they only let soldiers do so many tours of duty, right? It was time for me to kind of take a step back. And when I came to my wife, she said, "Look, I want you to do what makes you happy. Just make sure the lights don't get turned off."
Facts.
And so I said, "Hey," she gave me the filter. So I went with it from there. But I think what I realized is, for me, I have a risk tolerance to be an entrepreneur and to do the work of business. And so I think that that's a huge qualifier to be able to do this kind of work, because you got to be able to deal with the ebbs and flows, of that. But it's allowed me the space to really be creative and to qualify the kind of work that I do. And so many people will have similar topics that we provide at the Simmons Advantage, but what they don't have is the perspective of a black male who's providing that, who's providing the influence with what gets implemented.
So since you've been out there, right, and created the Simmons Advantage, what are some of because being an entrepreneur, you have to be able to take the no's and the no's a lot, 99% or the no's, right? And so like the one, yes. Like what are some of the things that you've experienced positively and then negatively, jumping out there and doing your own thing?
What's interesting is that a couple of years ago, we started to refine our back office and went with Salesforce. And so we wanted to do a better job of how we were tracking sales and clients. And when I started looking at the points of contact of the people who were executing contracts for us, 75% of all those points of contact were black women.
Yes.
And then second were white women. But I looked at my contact list, the number of people I was having meetings with was like 60% men, black, white, but they weren't executing, they weren't delivering. It's a follow-up. And so what I realized is what people really want to rock with you, the answer is yes.
Yes.
It's no fumbling and back and forth, just 2 or 3 meetings. And what I realized with black women is if they believe in what you're doing, the answer is yes, if it's going to be yes, and they lock in to ensure that they pull you through whatever procurement process that's there to make sure that you get that thing done for them. And so for me, I double down on that. I make sure I go back to them and I give them more than what they contracted for.
Absolutely.
Because I know what it does for them to put themselves on the line, to have to go through and make sure that happens. Because I see how many times I get rejected in these other places.
But why do you think with the men? Like, what the hell is the issue? Like, because I didn't have the percentages like that locked in. It was just like the brothers and even white men. It was just hard. Like you'd be like, what the hell? Like you have me out here 4 or 5 times. I'm gonna be honest, man.
I think there is a sense of jealousy. That I think is there that they don't necessarily want to admit. If you come in and your presence being inside their district. And then sometimes I think that men just aren't as knowledgeable about how to execute things, right? They spend a lot of time talking and pontificating around, the theories and the assemblies. But when it comes to the technical things around how to execute inside a district, it's usually going to be a woman that's going to understand what that process is. And so I just think we have to do a better job. I'm a technical person. I can do a little bit of both. I like to understand the details and what those things are. And so I find myself a lot of times educating people in the districts about their own procurement process.
Yes,
You know, because
absolutely.
I've been in there so much.
So as you were going through it, and you're methodically looking at how you created it and stuff like that, how did you determine what you were going to focus in on as a support, right? And what were some of those early growth markers?
So what's interesting, I got some really good feedback from a wealthy mentor of mine.
Okay.
And he said, you know, as you're thinking about entrepreneurship, what I want you to do is to think deeply about how to monetize your knowledge.
Okay.
And so it took me a couple of years to really come to my own like answer about that. And so he gave things to me like, you know, he said, would you work 40 hours a week? I said, yeah, I work 40 hours. He said, would you work 60? Would you work 70? I said, yeah, I work all of those hours. He said, yeah. He's like, as an entrepreneur, he said, so the difference between me and you is you would work those 80 hours or more a week to run your business, while I would work 40 hours while I find another 30 people to work 40. He said, because that's how I'm thinking about scaling and maximizing the revenue. Now, when he shared that example, it made me think about how I like to structure the business. And for me, because of where we are currently, it's best for me to have a small number of full-time employees, but a larger percentage of consultants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So 100%. I could go project-based with them and evidence-based. Yes. Because the other thing that I say as a small business, if you're gonna work with the Simmons Advantage, we only eat what we kill. You see what I'm saying? We only eat what we kill. Yep. So I'm not going to go out and be pimped by a contractor to go out and get large contracts just for you to eat and then run off to the sunset. So if you are a person that's helping me find contracts and delivering on those contracts, don't introduce me to somebody. You need to be talking to that person and saying, look, this is my guy. That money that you told me you have, give it to him.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Because if you're not doing that, it just puts you down the priority list for me. And so I'm very transparent with the consultants about that. And so that's been something that's been like motivational and accountable, right? Because a lot of times you get into consulting, you might be in a large company. We're not a large company, right? We're growing. And so if you want to come and grow with us, you got to get some skin in the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that a lot of the people, the majority of the people, they think they want to do it until it comes time to actually do it?
Yeah, I do. I think what I start to see as an example of that is have people who work on multiple contracts.
Okay.
They can begin to get comfortable, right? That's when the push for raises, additional rates and things like that come in. But that's where I have to push back and say, well, how many clients have you brought us? Right? How have you extended the clients that we already have? So your presence at those places, how have you made the Simmons Advantage grow within that client? And so if you can't answer that and say yes unequivocally, then that's where my pushback for their growth is. And maybe that's, you know, something that you feel is not your space, but that we don't become the best partner for you, you know, for those extra things.
Looking back when you first started, right? Is there any information or piece of advice now that you would give to yourself?
Oh yeah, no question about it. No question about it. Ask for the money. Ask for the money. The rate is the rate. What Fat Joe say? Yesterday's price ain't today's.
Yep.
And so a lot of times as black businesses, what we will do is lower our price for whatever the bag is.
Yep.
No. That's nickel and diamond. They don't do that with other companies. They don't allow, because the people who nickel and dime, they're never gonna stop. They're gonna always
ask for more.
Oh no, and they late to pay.
Yes.
Right. And so for me, I like to put the price out. This is what we're gonna do. And if they agree to it, they agree to it. And sometimes it's best to walk away because all money ain't good money.
That was the biggest thing that I learned, right? Is how to say no now.
Yes.
Like, nah, like this shit ain't even worth it.
That's right.
Because you're gonna put me through hell through little like nickel or dime contracts, and you're not doing that.
That's right.
To the other company.
That's right.
Right? And like that's what I would tell myself 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Like this is like why don't take that contract.
So and I'm gonna do this because it's us and it's important that we have real conversation because sometimes things don't get named. And so during COVID, when everyone and during the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, everyone wanted to now be DEI. Everyone wanted to have, you see all those positions start disappearing, right? Because they weren't funding them. And so the Aspen Institute, who I had done a lot of work with, come to me and say, hey, what do you think we should do? We got teachers who are teaching social studies. We got districts and other partners. Do you have advice for us? I said, here's the advice. Bring all of those districts to the table with their analysis of any vendor that they have that's a minority-owned vendor that has a 6-figure or more contract. Bring the percentages of those people to the table and ask them when they come to the meeting, we don't need you to post on your website. Give 6-figure contracts to the people in the room that you vetted. So you call me for my intellectual property for free, or you want me to come out and fly me out for bagels and a donut. Fuck that. I don't need that. I want you to make the plug. And so that's where like we got to do better as we connect. And you and I've been talking about this, is applying pressure to these people. Like, it's people here.
Oh yeah.
That know good and damn well they owe us contracts for the intellectual things that we've shared with them for free. And so I started my conversation in the check-in line. Like, oh bruh. Yeah, I know we've been missing each other, but today I need the contract. Right. And so asking and being really clear with people up front, because I want you to know if you feel pressure, then I want you to feel the pressure when you try and call me for free.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so let's just go ahead and disconnect. If you feel uncomfortable, I feel uncomfortable too, because I can't feed my kids. Right. I'm giving you what other people are paying for free, and you got the bag to pay for it.
And you know, I thought about, you know, when we were together a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
For Dr. Shivers' thing.
Yeah.
And you called it. You said, look, like, why do we have to beg each other for little things? Like, that's a real conversation.
That's right.
Like, I have it tatted on me, reciprocity.
Come on.
Right. And like, you're gonna get that money there, or you're gonna lose it. It just sits.
That's right.
And then now you're trying to spend in June, and you're buying miscellaneous shit that doesn't matter anyway.
Right.
But you calling me up for everything other. Like, that is a real pain point.
That's right.
And, you know, similar to what you said when you were going through the system, right? Like, you get abused, man. Like, you really get abused. And, like, I'm 16 years in, and I'm jaded. Like, I'm really jaded towards a lot of systems and structures where you're like, yo, you saw me struggle.
That's right.
Right? Like, it shouldn't be like that when my stuff is, I'm gonna give you more.
Yes.
Right? For a fair price. Don't try to cut me down, right? And I'm going to be vested in it.
That's right.
And it seems like you're really vested in the work and the districts that you're with.
No question about it, man. I think, you know, and one of the things that we'll talk about in our part 2 is every district across the country that is identified for comprehensive school improvement, CSI or TSI, every single one of them has absenteeism as an issue.
Yes. Also,
is special education.
Yes.
CSI or TSI. And so when I come to them and say, look, this is what we can do. I've always led schools that had 30% or more sped. And so when we come to them, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, look, if you feel like you got something happening with your teachers, give us that, because your school will never be high performing. If the kids that you identify as having a need, you continue to create an achievement gap within your school.
Yes.
And so that's the kind of conversation.
You ain't never going to catch up.
And you're not even thinking about it, right? Because some of these other things can become plaguing so much to you that you, and your fear around the compliance and the legal things around special education, but you got a guy right here. That's what I'm saying. You identify 75% of it. And so your answer to not choosing me is to send them to prison.
Yes. Yep.
That's the school to prison pipeline.
And see, what I was sharing with like other entrepreneurs, and there's not many Black male CEOs. Like,
facts.
I'm talking about where you get mentored.
That's right.
Usually we're getting mentored by rich white males.
That's right.
There's not that many.
That's right.
So when people be like, yo, Dave, you made this misstep, I say, who the fuck am I, like, who talking to me?
That's right.
I don't know. I didn't go to school for business.
That's right.
I'm trying to figure this shit out and feed the kids.
That's right.
Right? And so, you know, one of the things that I've suggested is when we have an entrance into a district or opportunity, if I don't do that, instead of me walking away and I know someone that does that,
right,
the plug should be, you know something, that's not my thing. You're not there yet, right? But I know my man can do this. He can help you set the structure and the foundation for me to do my work.
Facts.
And that's the thing, like, I'm not gonna go in and do a comprehensive needs assessment or organizational, like that's, like, I'm really clear with what we do, but the partnership to say, you know something, before I can come in and work with you, you got to get with this guy and his organization. He's gonna set the parameters for me to even come in.
That's right.
Because if not, all you're gonna do is blame me that my shit ain't working, and it's really not my shit.
That's right.
You don't have the systems and structures for my shit.
That's right.
Right? And we just gotta be more willing as organizations to be able to do that. Like,
That's right.
Like that's called an assist.
Yeah. And I think to that point, that's a qualifier is all skin folk and kinfolk. So for us, we got to hold each other accountable. And so what you've been able to build with Concentric, you know, other people got to be able to say, when I step up and I say, this is my lane, you got to be able to produce the evidence that say that you can be successful.
Yes.
The people that you bring on your team, they got to be tight, right? So just because you're black doesn't mean you get access to this level. And I'm going to share a story. So Magic Johnson was talking to, he was talking to not Rich Paul, but Maverick Carter.
Okay.
And he said, you know, when I was doing $100,000 deals, I had people that was with me that was here. But then when I started doing $1 million deals, I was here. He said, but when I started doing $100 million deals, the people I was making $1 million deals, they said, hey, look, you're not calling me Mac, you're not doing this. He said, because I'm at a different place.
And you're gonna fuck up the bag.
Yes.
You can't come with.
You're not here yet. You're not even thinking about it. So you're trying to make me do the work to bring you here. You got to do the work to get here. And so that's the other thing that I'm saying is like, look, if the buy-in to get into the collaboration is 100,000, you got to have 100 racks, right? You got to have 100 racks. If not, then you got to just ask to sit there quietly while the big dogs talk, right? If the ask is $1 million, that's what you have to do, because at that level, it's a different kind of level of complexity and execution. And so you can't just be jumping in and you at a $10,000 level. No, we're not doing that. Right? I just did 10,000 last hour. Right? So that's
you
not
can't sit at the table. You can't come to the room.
Yeah, we're not doing that. And so to me, I'm not even focused until we at 100 racks. You know? So like if we're not there, I'm like, hey, why are we under? And so I think there is that's a level of understanding that we need to have, transparent around how businesses operate and what that cash flow and what those expectations are. So yeah, I think that's a great opportunity for us to bring people together, but to understand what the qualifiers are to come into the room.
Man, I want to thank you. I want everyone to understand there's a part 2. There's something else I'm going to drop on you off camera. I want you to consider. But I want everyone to go. Where can they find you?
All right, www.simmonsadvantage.com. That's a website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
You're putting out good content, man. I'm seeing it. I want to thank you for tuning in. As always, concentric.world. You can find all of our content. There's going to be a part 2. I want you to stay tuned. Until next time, I'm David Heiber, your host, Concentric Education Solutions Podcast, one door at a time. See you soon.